Everybody, it's time for us to begin. I think all the right people are in the room. And just a reminder, this is we're going to have 3 topics today for this budget workshop. We'll start with the Judicial District. Miss Ellen House, I guess you're here. We're going to hear from you first. We'll just talk that through and see how long that takes, and we'll move from that to some public safety stuff after you. So thank you for coming today, and I'd like to turn this over to you.
Well, thank you for having me and allowing me to explain and answer questions about our decision package number 2, which is asking for additional funds to increase the rate of pay, the hourly rate of pay for our attorneys that represent indigent and otherwise statutorily required litigants. If you remember, from our budget presentation, we currently pay at a rate based on $50 an hour. We have paid at that rate for about 15 years, and we are requesting that we increase that to a rate of $65 an hour. And the way we came up with that amount is the Kansas Board of Indigent Defense Services, their executive director, has determined that that is the minimum amount that should be paid to attorneys in order for them to be able to cover their overhead. So if we would raise all of the attorney fees in the district, it would result in an over $400,000 increase. And so recognizing that that is probably not doable this year, we are requesting that we look at only 2 areas and increase the criminal and juvenile misdemeanor areas for a total of $101,250. The ability to attract and retain qualified, competent attorneys on our appointment lists is essential to the functions of the court, and we believe that by raising the rate we will be able to do that. The next slide shows the attorney fee increase by area, and again we are requesting for juvenile offender misdemeanors and criminal misdemeanors. I made a chart for you showing the judicial districts in Kansas and the hourly rate that they pay. And you can see we're at 50, and there are many that are at 80, and that $80 is what bids used to pay before they were cut back by the state and determined at that point it was 62, and then they recently raised it to 65. Some still pay at the 65, which is also the bids rate, and then others just have their own rate, and I'm not sure where those come from. During our budget presentation, you had mentioned that you would like to see some statistics on the efficiency of the court, and so I just wanted to put in a short slide here showing often the courts are looked at as urban versus rural, and so the 4 large courts in the state we're often compared to, and we have the highest clearance rate of all in 2015, and you can see that we also have 53% more filings than even the next court, and we have the overall highest caseload per judge in Chapter 60, which are your major civil cases, felony, and domestic relations, which those types of cases usually take more time. So I just wanted to point that out. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
We'll start out with Commissioner Norton.
Ellen, caseload, which one of these groups has the highest caseload? Would I assume that child in need of care has the highest paid load because you put the most money into that?
No, that is not the case.
That's not the correlation. That's why.
Child in need of care cases, we have the child is represented by an attorney, the mother is represented by an attorney, any father or alleged father is represented by an attorney. So you may have 4 or 5 attorneys in one case on sync, and that's why those cases are so expensive.
And those are court appointed if they don't have one. So
yes.
So the caseload there may be lower, but
correct.
The number of attorneys and the pay
is higher because of the number of attorneys. Yes.
Okay, then what is sync, GALS?
Those are the guardian ad litems. Those are the attorneys that represent the children.
Okay. So altogether, that's child in need of care, either parents, spouses, significant others, and children is over 200,000.
Yes.
How hard is it to find attorneys to do those cases? If you had to rank the 8 different categories, did you pick the 2 that are hardest to try and hardest to find attorneys to assign, or is there some other reason?
I picked the 2 that we hear the most complaints about. And the reason I believe we hear the most complaints is because we have that other side of the coin, which is the felony cases that are paid at the bids level. And so we have an attorney that may be in court on a felony case, and they're getting paid at $65 an hour, and then they step over to their next defendant, and they're getting paid at $50.
Okay. Did you run any numbers if you went up to $60 for everything? Or did you just say we're going to pick 2 and go to 65? I mean,
You know, I think I did at some point. I can't tell you what they are off the top of my head, though.
okay. That's all I have right now.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Norton. Commissioner Peterjohn?
Yes, on decision package page 202, Ellen, can you help me out here so I make sure I understand this correctly. You've got one bullet point that talks about $400,000 plus increase. Next bullet point is $101,250. So is the total here, adding those 2 sums together, a little over $500,000?
No. The 101,250 is breaking out the juvenile offender and the criminal misdemeanor that are bolded on the next page, and they make up that they're already included in that 425 number.
So that 101,000 is part of the 400,000?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, because I wanted to make sure I understood that. You mentioned some of the mapped area didn't include amounts for all of the districts in the state, so we just don't know on those districts.
I haven't heard back from those districts.
You haven't heard back? Okay.
Right.
On the next page, you had a district court efficiency and you had a clearance rate. How do we have a clearance rate that's over 100%?
Well, because the clearance rate is considered the number of filings that come in per year and the number of cases that are cleared. We may have cleared a 2012 case in 2015, so that's going to be counted in the dispositions. Not every case that comes in a year is cleared in the same year.
Okay, so I'm just trying to understand how we could end up with more dispositions than theoretically we've got cases. So.
Well, it's not.
But it's just for that calendar year.
It's just for that calendar, what came in and what went out. It's not. It's
Okay.
not the remaining pending.
So and so anything that could have been filed in 2015 but wasn't disposed of wouldn't be included, but older stuff would. Okay.
Right.
Okay, so the 30% increase from $50 an hour to $65 an hour, that would result in, when it says $400,000 plus, give me an idea of what we're talking about with plus.
It's 425.
425.
Mm-hmm. $425,896 is what my latest calculation was.
Okay, well, 425, 426, that's reasonable rounding. Thank you.
Commissioner Unruh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ellen, you'd implied that you have, or I thought you implied that it's difficult to find enough attorneys at that rate. And is that for the attorneys in all these different categories?
Yes, and I don't want to imply that we don't have enough attorneys. It is maintaining quality attorneys.
Be careful.
I am being very careful.
Okay, I got it.
There are 2 different ways to look at attorneys being on the appointment list. The appointment list is made up a lot of new attorneys who are trying to build a client base and need the work. Maybe not as experienced. They can come in and maybe do a traffic case, a speeding ticket, that sort of thing, not a problem. They would not be the type we would want to have on a murder or a rape or an aggravated robbery case, because cases are much more difficult. We also have attorneys who are experienced and well seasoned and feel that it is part of their duty to the community to provide their services on this sort of a panel, and we have some of those. It is those types of attorneys that we are losing, and that's my concern, is that we are losing the qualified, experienced attorneys because they simply cannot afford to work for our rate anymore.
And have you polled them or whatever, saying that 65 would be enough of an incentive, or are we just thinking 30% increase, that ought to get them?
I'm simply going off of what the bids determined was the lowest amount possible. There is not a day that goes by that I do not either receive a phone call or a visit to my office, or somebody stops me in the hallway or in the elevator to complain about the rates that we pay and ask when they're going to be changed.
Okay. Well, when I looked at your map and see the disparity between Sedgwick County and others, and just $50 an hour seems like a nice round number, but I take your car in to get repaired and you're going to be billed at $80 an hour at least. So I understand that there's going to be a demand for a little more equitable billing per hour.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Norton?
Can you estimate the free market rate that's out there? Because I know attorneys make up to $250, $300 plus dollars an hour if they're really good at what they do, depending on the discipline they're in. But what is the kind of the going free market rate for maybe somebody that's been an attorney for 5 to 10 years?
I'd say an average would be $125 to $150.
Okay. And explain to me the difference between these assigned legal fees and public defenders.
Okay. Public defenders, they do the felony criminal cases.
Okay.
And so you'll notice that when I speak about the cases we pay, we're paying criminal misdemeanor cases. And then the public defender also does not handle any of the juvenile cases, no matter what they are. And so they take all felony criminal cases, and then we pay the rest.
Okay. What is the rate for public defenders? Or is that a salary?
They are state employees, and they are paid a salary to take whatever comes.
Can you estimate at all what they're paid per hour?
I do not know.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Just a couple more questions. If I heard you correctly, you kind of indicated that the skill set of the attorneys that handle these 8 different categories are probably a little bit different than each other. In other words, paying someone $50 an hour for say, traffic attorney would be maybe more reasonable than paying someone in the juvenile offender category. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, for some juvenile offender cases, yes, definitely.
Okay. It just occurred to me, again, we've left this rate alone for 15 years, and we're suddenly taking this jump. It seems like we ought to, my first thought was that we ought to maybe consider transitioning all 8 of them over time up to something that's more reasonable.
Okay.
Because it seems like, right, I guess just a thought, you've got folks out there that are going to be getting $50 an hour, and when are we going to address them? Is that going to happen next year? Is that the plan?
That would be my plan, would be to phase them in.
And
yes.
but those are folks that are making 65. They'll be left alone then. And then the year after that, we'll see maybe another fourth of them brought up, and then the finally 4 years, we'll see everybody at 65. So, I guess what I'm wondering is, it seems like, maybe we ought to differentiate the different skill set with different rates first of all, but bring them all up at the same time. In other words, if traffic is they should make less dollars per hour than somebody who's in juvenile offender. Recognize that in the fee structure, but leave it that way forever.
Okay.
But bring them all up at the same time, to some corrected number, wherever our target is. I guess to me, this seems like the strategy, the way we're doing this, is not necessarily the way that I would have created it. I'm just curious if this really is the right way to do this, only because I think we're creating more potential conflict within the folks that are getting these dollars. Again, to leave someone at 65 for 4 years, I'm not sure that makes sense. And to pay someone traffic 65 when someone is doing juvenile offender at the same rate down the road, does that make sense? I guess I don't know that it does to me. So I'm just trying to understand if this is the right strategy.
Well, I can say we will never be able to pay the attorneys what they're worth. Whether you differentiate, the case value or not, we will never even come close. Again, I base the 65 off of the fact that the state had done the study and determined that that was the lowest amount of hourly rate to pay an attorney to cover overhead. So to me, that becomes the starting point. If you want to differentiate, you would pay upwards from there. I'm wanting to pay our attorneys a livable wage or a livable rate so that we can attract and retain good attorneys. But I also am mixing that with the fact that we have fiduciary duties to the taxpayers that we can't pay what these people are worth. And also another way to look at it is if a person, even if they charge $150 or $200 in private practice, they're going to have cases that don't pay. They're going to have clients that simply don't pay the bill. If they contract with us or if they sign up with us, we're going to pay the bill. They know that they're going to get that 65 or that 50. So to me, it kind of balances out. But at the end of the day, I simply want to be able to pay our attorneys a livable wage.
Okay. If I was to present just another idea,
Sure.
I'm not saying this is the right answer. I'm just wondering if this makes any sense at all. Why would we not just transition all of these up together, or say over 4 years to get to 65? In other words, give everybody a fourth of that $15 raise this year, and then another fourth next year. Why is this method better than necessarily doing it the way I just described?
I'm not sure that it is better. It's just simply a different way of looking at it.
All right. Anyway, again, if it's true that the skill sets are different between the different categories, then I can see how maybe the rates ought to be different, but maybe stay different, and we should maybe the guys that are have the most difficult job, maybe they should be above 65, for
Okay.
example. Maybe the traffic guys will never get to 65. Maybe they'll stay at 60. I don't know. Just an idea. Something to explore. All right.
Okay.
Commissioner Norton has other comments.
This is a volunteer pool.
Yeah, it is.
Attorneys put their name in to
Yes.
do some, I guess, community service, and they get paid for it, but it is a
Right.
volunteer. And you rotate them? I mean, does somebody get a bigger caseload generally than someone else, or their name comes up and you ask
No.
them to?
We certainly try not to do that. Basically, we try to assign 5 cases at a time, so that hopefully, if they're coming in at the same time, maybe they will all be disposed of at the same time. That doesn't always work, but basically we assign them in blocks of 5. And yes, it just goes down the list, and when you hit the end of the list, you start over. Now, there are some, as in juvenile court, since we are dealing with both misdemeanors and felonies there, we do have a list of, there's I think 6 attorneys that they are the only attorneys that can be assigned on a level 5 or higher felony, because they
rotate quicker than
and they rotate quicker.
the general pool. How many cases or hours would you estimate that the attorneys in the pool would get each year? I mean, is it 100? Or is it 20? Is it...
Annually, I've not done that calculation. I can tell you the way we're paying now, if you take a criminal misdemeanor case, we're paying $150 for a plea. So we're assuming that they spend 3 hours on a plea case. Some may be less, some may be more. If it goes to bench trial, we pay $500. We're assuming they spend 10 hours. And likewise, if it goes to jury trial, we pay $1,000. We assume they spend 20 hours.
All right. Commissioners, any other questions or comments for Ms. Ellen House? Seeing none. I don't think we have any other questions or
Okay.
comments for you, so you're off the hook now.
Thank you.
for the presentation today. Okay.
Not yet.
I believe, are we moving to the next category? Okay, we're going to go to Public Safety Division Workshop, recognizing Director Marvin Duncan.
Commissioners, you should have your handout at your desks for this as well.
Click some. There it is. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Marvin Duncan, Director of Public Safety Division. And this is part one for the Public Safety Division, part one workshop. We'll come back in a couple of weeks with the other departments, but today we're going to talk about Sedgwick County Fire District Number 1 and their decision package, and Chief Leak is here. And he also has our radio shop supervisor. Jared's here. If things get really technical, he'll step in and keep us all straight. Here's the chief's decision package is about radio replacement plan in the fire department, and we're looking to purchase 102 portable radios with remote speaker microphones, and that request is for $789,108. Next decision package is from the Forensic Science Center. Dr. Rohrig is here today, and he is asking for a little extra money for the increased cost of DNA kits for $13,000. He also is looking for some extra money for the increased cost of testing sexual assault kit submissions for $26,000. And then finally, he's looking for support for an extra forensic science person, and that would come at a price of $87,810. And that is a quick review of what we're here to talk about today, and we'll all stand for questions.
All right, Commissioner Norton.
Let's start out with the radio replacement. Does this meet all the interoperability that we've had such issues with years ago, because we had several different systems that didn't talk to each other? Is that important to fire? I thought that it was, but does this meet
We've
that?
resolved that issue. We can talk to each other, and we can talk to some of the other communities that have updated to the current.
And does this also interface with police or Sedgwick County Sheriff?
No,
It does not.
we do not always get those channels that they have. We can't always be on the same channel.
Okay.
Right. If you want.
That's all I've got on that
Okay.
right now.
I have one question for you, Chief, and that is, well, maybe this is for Lindsay, I don't know. Do the estimates, I think this is to be paid out of the fire district budget. I assume that's correct.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Do the estimates for our budget performance include the expenditures for the two pumper trucks and for these radios? In other words, is that decision package reflected in our balance, our fund balances?
No, we actually use in their forecast the planned vehicle replacement schedule that they give us, and so we typically don't request that they bring that to you as a decision package, as long as it's part of that planned schedule.
All right. So we had a bid board item that gave us a chance to consider purchasing two vehicles. That's still kind of in limbo right now. So right now, does the budget fund balances reflect the likelihood that we would go ahead and make that purchase?
The ones we've been looking at, yes, do include the lease principal payments that we would make over 8 years
Okay.
for those two pumper trucks.
But those fund balances do not include the purchase of these radios?
Correct.
Okay. All right. And just a quick question on the radios. I'm not saying this isn't a nice to have, but I'm just curious about the remote speaker microphones. Can you talk about that? Why is that important? How is that different than what we have now?
Jared,
Is
do
it
you wanna tell me?
is it necessary, or is it a nice to have? What's the justification for the
Yes,
remote microphone?
it's necessary. It would be the lapel mic. And so the reason it's especially necessary for those guys is because they have what's called a low air alarm. that happens when they're inside a fire scene. And so that low air alarm will actually start emitting in their hood, and so they have to be able to speak to it as they're wearing their hood. So the lapel mic would sit right here so they could speak while they're fighting the fire.
So they do wear these while they're inside of a building fighting the fire?
They do.
Okay. Okay. And in the radios they have right now, they don't have this feature?
They do have that feature.
They do have this feature. Yes. Okay. So we're really talking about just an upgrade of the similar type of radio, just something that's newer.
That's correct.
And the reason is because we can't get parts, can't maintain the old radios.
The radios are, they've received their end-of-life notice from Motorola, and Motorola will stop supporting them in the coming years.
What is the plan? What are you going to do with the old radios if we were to make this purchase?
Sometimes when you go out to RFP on things like this, they'll take them as trade-in, and then they'll give you a discount towards your new product. Some other counties, what they like to do is they like to funnel these old radios down to Public Works, and then it's just kind of a hand-me-down thing. Whenever public safety upgrades, Public Works will take the older equipment.
Okay, and these radios will they don't, firefighters don't wear these while they're on duty all the time. Just they put them on when they actually go to fight a fire. Is that?
Yes. Go ahead.
They reside in the truck, and the truck they'll have a vehicle charger, so the radio will always be on the charger at all times. And then when they jump in the truck, they'll always have the radio. Each position inside the truck has a radio assigned to it, so the driver would have its own handheld.
Okay, so 102, does that represent, how many firefighters do we actually have now, Chief?
139.
139? And that's for 3 shifts. Is there?
Well, just the boots on the ground, we're talking less than that. We're talking about a 97, 98, somewhere in there. That are actually,
Okay. But you're asking for 102 radios. How come 102 radios? How many firefighters do you have on a single shift? Say on today, how many firefighters are on duty today?
approximately 30.
30.
And I'm approximating right now.
I guess I'm just wondering why we need 102 radios if we only have about 30 firefighters.
Well, some are in the support vehicles that are not actually assigned to an individual, and we'll bring those support vehicles to the scene. So you have radios in those as well. And that's the hazmat truck, those are the mobile air, some of the support vehicles that we have.
Is there any reason why we need to do this all at one time? Would it be reasonable for us to do this over a couple of years? Let's say buy a fourth or a third or a half of these over, let's say, this year, and then buy another set of this down the road. So, those we transition over time rather than do it all at one time. Is there some reason why we need to do this all at once?
There could be a hybrid approach where you did something similar to that. You have to be careful when you're talking with the portable radios and the boots on the ground guys. What you don't want to have is you don't want to have two style of radios out there for the guys fighting the fire. When these guys get these new radios, they're going to come with new vocoders and new noise canceling features that they're not used to. And so there's going to have to be significant training involved with these new handheld radios. The noise canceling, especially for the fireground package, is so strong that, I mean, just turning your head away from your mic a little bit, you could cancel out yourself completely. If we wanted to go with a phased-in approach, I think the phased-in approach, you would have to segregate maybe the boots on the ground from administration. The vehicle radios, I think a phased approach would actually be optimal, just because it takes some time to get these things installed in all the different apparatuses. And then once you put them in there, they still have to interface with all the headsets that they wear and all those things. And so what you could end up with is, if you bought them all at once, you could end up with a scenario where you're spending all your warranty sitting in a box waiting to be installed. And so I think on mobile radios, a phased-in approach is actually probably the optimal solution.
And how long would that phased-in approach need to last if you did it? If you did what you just said right now for the vehicles, would it something you do over a couple of years, you think? Or?
I would recommend half in 16 and half in 17.
I see. Can someone break this? So 102 radios includes the vehicle radios as well. So someone can someone break that down for us? We could see what that would allow us potentially to consider for a later year.
The 102 was the portables, and there were 63 mobiles. The portables came in at just over $500,000 at $530,000, and the remaining $258,000 was for the mobile radios.
Okay. Now the slide doesn't talk about. I remember reading that in the. I got a document that I think someone sent to me that I think it talked about the two different kinds of radios and the two different costs. And the total cost for the portables and the mobile radios is $789.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And that covers the mobile chargers, the one vehicles, and it pretty well covers everything.
Okay. I'll let the commissioners talk for a little bit. Commissioner Norton?
If we do a phased-in approach, though, will the old radios talk to the new ones? I mean, will they?
Yes. Yeah.
There won't be a problem there if we do that.
It will not. City of Wichita is already using some of these radios in their fire department, and we have no problems talking to them. Some other departments have already started replacing their radios as well. And these are interoperable with PD, EMS. We actually have a communication plan in the radio, so they'll not only talk to anybody in Sedgwick County, but anyone in the state of Kansas. You can take the thing anywhere in Kansas and speak on it.
I know that was part of some kind of a ruling 5-6 years ago that all the first responders needed to be able to talk to each other. So we're moving that way pretty close then. Is that correct?
Yeah, we're there now.
Okay. Are there other, this is kind of a general question, maybe you won't know, are there other departments that are buying electronic devices like this at this time, or are in need in the next year or two where we could bundle all of it and purchase it at one time instead of doing it for the fire district, doing it for sheriff, doing it for EMS? Is there something where we can bundle all that and do parts of it each year, several years?
I would think that would be a possibility. I know the city of Wichita is in the same boat we are on the strong majority of their radios, and so they're actually looking at radios right now.
Commissioner.
Okay, would they have the same radios that we have? Do they?
They do.
Same supplier?
Yep.
Is
Same
it Motorola 800 or is it?
Yes.
Yes. I guess the next question would be, why wouldn't intergovernmental groups go together and purchase? If we need the same exact radio they do and they're in the same boat, I got to believe if you bought not 102 but 500 out of all the different entities in this county, you get a better price.
I agree.
I'm just supposing. Chris, you had.
Yeah, Commissioner, at the very least, I would expect that we'll issue one RFP for all of the county's anticipated needs for all the various agencies, so that we do get the benefit of the bulk pricing. And knowing that Wichita and perhaps other jurisdictions in this area will have a similar need at the same time, I would expect that we'll be in discussion with them about the possibility of some sort of a joint purchase.
Have we done that in the past?
When we replaced radios the last go-round, a part of Sedgwick County's activity was replacing radios for City of Wichita agencies, some City of Wichita agencies. So to a certain extent, yes. We did not at that time do a joint procurement, however.
Well, it just seems like now with the new agreements on police and fire and sheriff and all of that, that purchasing would be another place where we could fuse together and, you know.
Well, and on a larger scale, we're in the process of doing that same thing with election equipment. You know that we're in the process of buying new equipment for our election supervisor. Other counties in the state of Kansas have the same need, and so our election supervisor joined with the election supervisors of at least 3 other counties to decide together what product was going to best serve the interests. Sedgwick County issued the RFP for all of those organizations, and now each of them is entering into individual contracts based on the pricing that Sedgwick County received for that joint purchase.
Remind me, when we bought some electronics for the sheriff's department, and I think it was radios, didn't we buy them for some of the small
Yes.
cities too, second,
it
third
was,
class
yes.
cities, all so that everybody could talk with each other on
Yes.
the same? All I have.
Just a quick comment on that, on what you just said there. I believe Shawnee County actually already purchased their equipment, and they have a contract that says if we buy it within a certain time frame and buy the same stuff, we'll still get the same we'll get the discount. In fact, I think there's a lowering of the fee for Shawnee County should we make that purchase. And so there's a contract between the counties, I think, that allows us to do it independently, but to the benefit of each county should we all make the same decision. So I'm not sure if that type of an arrangement could be made with other large jurisdictions like the city of Wichita. So other comments, Commissioner Ranzau?
Yeah, you said there's been an end-of-life notice given on these radios. When is the exact date that Motorola will no longer support these?
I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it is December 31st of 2018.
And these numbers here, are they for the Motorola replacement?
Yes. They're based off Motorola.
Could we open that up to other radios?
We could. About 3 years ago, we purchased a fleet of E.F. Johnson radios for Public Works. At the time, we had just got this new radio system that we could have any vendor on. We didn't have a lot of data behind E.F. Johnson. Since then, we have a lot of data on E.F. Johnson, and it's mostly negative data. The audio quality is terrible on them. They malfunction constantly. They malfunction to a degree where they're actually causing damage to our radio system. And so at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, we'll have to load up in a vehicle and go sweep the airwaves and chase an interfering radio signal, and every single time it ends up being an E.F. Johnson. I'd say that if we were going to start looking at other radios, I'd say that the first thing to do is we need to purchase some now and get them out there and get them used so we can start getting some data on other competitors. I know I can't speak a lot of Harris. From right now, it appears they have a good product and they come in at a reasonable price. I know the city right now is, they just purchased 20 of them so they could get 20 out in their fleet and get them used so that we can start getting some data on it.
How many different manufacturers are there of these types of radios, roughly?
There's roughly 5 key players. Kenwood, E.F. Johnson, Harris, Motorola, Tate.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Peter John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a variation of a question I was going to get into. Let me ask it a slightly different way. Motorola is often viewed as the dominant player, at least in this part of the industry. Do you have any idea what sort of market share? I mean, how competitive is the marketplace between these 5 suppliers of radios? And I mean, are we talking like they used to talk in the computer age of the 1980s, it was IBM and the 7 Dwarfs, Burroughs and NCR, Sperry, and a bunch of others. I mean, is that the type of description would you describe the radio environment today, or are we looking at 5 roughly comparable companies that have somewhere between 10 to 25% of the market share, and they're battling between each other?
In my opinion, there's 2 key players. There's Harris and Motorola right now, and I think that those 2 have the majority of the market.
Is Harris being used anywhere in South Central that you know of?
Yeah, Oklahoma is real big on Harris. I know Broken Arrow's Harris, Tulsa, Oklahoma City's Harris. They also have Harris radio systems down there as well, not only just the subscribers. Also, the federal government, Harris is the lead supplier for their radios.
Okay, because I was just, in terms of, I mean, you get better prices 2 ways. One, it can be by buying in volume, but the other thing is if we draw the specs so there's only one provider, I'm sorry, you sole source and you're going to get hammered.
Agreed.
And so I'm kind of torn here because I understand Commissioner Norton's point, which is an excellent one. I mean, obviously, if you buy 500 of something, you'll get a better deal than if you buy 100. But conversely, if we draw the specs so tightly that we've only got, it's going to be the Motorola product or nothing. I'm trying to figure out the best way that we can get the best value for the taxpayer's dollar and have effective equipment out there to protect our firefighters.
I agree.
So it sounds like Harris would be somebody who ought to be on the list and getting serious consideration then, but nobody's locally using them.
No, we just have 20 of them inside our county, and other than that, I think there might be some up in Kansas City. I'm not for sure. I can get those answers for you, though.
Well, I'm very much interested in terms of our discussion today of obviously getting best value.
Thank you, Commissioner. I was just curious, does the sheriff or EMS use the exact same type of radios, the same model number? We know?
It's not the exact same. Fire's they're very distinct in their radios. They've got to be super waterproof and dustproof. We can't take one into a grain elevator and have a spark inside the radio, compromise the situation. And so it's a similar radio, but not to the caliber of a fire radio.
Okay. Did they receive an end-of-life letter also for do we know?
Yes.
They did. So same date, end of 2018?
The That 2018 would cover all of their handheld radios, all the fire department's handheld radios, and the strong majority of our fleet of mobiles would be the 2018. The following year in 2019, that's when the rest of the handheld radios will start falling off their support window as well.
Okay, so just trying to understand, is Motorola actually supporting these radios right now through 18?
Yes.
So you can get parts and can get repairs right now?
That's correct.
Okay. If we were to approve this decision package, is it the intent they would actually purchase the radios in 17 and put them in the field in 2017? Is that the intent?
That would be my intent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Does that, if we were to delay, I'm just curious, because again, I like to wear things out. I'd like to make sure we get the best, use them as long as possible. If we have good radios that are adequate from now through 2018, seems like we ought to talk about maybe making the purchase in 18 so we can have them ready for 19. Just a thought. And I get like the election equipment, I think they spent a number of years putting money into a fund to make that acquisition for election equipment. So they saw that coming. They saved up over a number of years until they thought they had enough, and then they stopped. And so, again, I'm not saying we don't need the radios. I'm just wondering if we wanted to be conservative, why would we not use the radios that are being serviced and that are serviceable from now till the end of 18 and have that purchase timed in such a way that the new radios are here, so when they do stop providing that service, we have the new radios in hand. That means we have, from now, this is the middle of 16, we've got the rest of this year, all of 17, and most of 18 to make that decision and save up money. Why is that not a good plan? Am I putting people at risk? Is there some reason why we can't do it that way?
The only thing I see on the plan would be the mobile radios, and that's just in the fact of the control head. The control head is the interface that the user uses. So it's the part that's inside the console that has the display on it and all the knobs where they change the channels and whatnot. That display we cannot purchase anymore, we cannot repair, and we're just running on spare stock. And so if we were effectively to replace their mobile radios, we could recoup their control heads and make it spare stock for EMS and sheriff.
I'm not sure I understood what you just said. So you're saying I'm not sure. So who would get the new radios and who would get the surplus that would create?
The fire department would get the new mobile radios.
Okay.
EMS and sheriff would reclaim the control heads that were removed from the fire vehicles.
Your name is Jared, is that correct?
That's correct.
And do you provide service to all three, the EMS, the sheriff, and the fire department? You do all of those? Okay. All right. Commissioner Norton?
What other parts can be pieced out if you did just that? If you replaced fire and used all of what you pull out of that system to piece out and use as parts for EMS and sheriff, how much of it can you use, or is the head the only thing you can use?
No, all of it could be used.
Okay.
Yeah, all of it could be used.
So that could become your backup supply. Some of it you throw away because it wasn't worth fooling with, but that could offset some of that to keep the more non-critical going into a fire or a dust situation.
Right.
Well, any other questions from commissioners on radios? I don't think there is.
Thank you. I sure appreciate the dialogue. It's been very helpful.
All right. We still have the DNA kits. I think we want to talk about that a little bit, I'm sure.
Okay. We'll have Dr. Rourke come up.
Okay, Dr. Rourke, thank you for being here. I think the question I had, and commissioners, if you have any questions, please turn your lights on. I would like to recognize you. Since there's no lights on, I'll go ahead and start. My question was, again, we do have the opportunity to send some of this to the state. I understand, and again, if we do send testing needs to the state, the detective, I guess, or somebody has to make that clear on the front end of the process. Is that correct?
Well, they'd have to make it clear, and they'd also have to transport the evidence up to the state laboratory.
And that's, again, most of the counties, that is the process they follow.
That is correct.
Okay. Do they just normally ship them through how does this stuff get there?
Depends upon the nature of the case, the fungibility of the evidence. They'll either drive it up or they will FedEx it so the chain of custody is maintained.
Okay. Well, most of this is really just for the, really, I guess, just, I'll be, let me state the obvious. We're only talking about $26,000 for additional testing of these kits. That's what we're talking about for the Regional Forensic Science Center to do the testing here. It's $26,000 more to do what's needed here.
That's to take care of our current
Yes.
submissions, yes.
Okay, so if we were to utilize the state's lab, we're not going to save all of that. We would still spend some of this money in trying to process these kits, getting them there, and that type of thing.
Well, that wouldn't be our responsibility. That would be the sheriff's responsibility if it was one of their cases. That would also impact the court here in Sedgwick County because the expert would have to come from Topeka or Great Bend. So we're looking at mainly a timing issue as far as getting the evidence processed in a timely fashion versus waiting for a significant period of time. We have one county, one jurisdiction to worry about. We're not competing, if the evidence is tested here, with 103 other counties within the state.
Can you describe what are these DNA kits? What is that? I mean, is this this is actually a collection? You collect the samples, and is that what this is?
No, sir. And let me make sure we're on the same page.
Slide number 3, $13,000.
Okay, 13,000. Those are the actual reagent kits, if you will. That's the chemicals, the supplies that are used to generate the DNA profile. Those kits are almost doubling in the cost due to the newer requirements driven by the profession to get more discriminatory information from that DNA profile.
Okay. But these kits are related to actual sexual assaults that are, or is this something else?
No, sir. These DNA kits are for any DNA examination. So it could be a rape case, a homicide case, aggravated battery, any violent crime. We use these DNA kits to generate the DNA profile.
What happens if someone's just arrested and you guys, under state law, I believe you guys collect a DNA sample at arrest, and is that something that's being tested through this?
No, sir. Arrestee profiles and convicted offender profiles, that DNA is collected usually at the jail, and that's sent up to the state laboratory for their processing.
All right, thank you. I think Commissioner Norton was next.
Talk about how this has progressed in the last 10 years, because DNA testing has become much more critical in so many of these cases. Talk about the slope of that as far as what you do at the Forensic Science Center.
As far as demand for DNA testing, the slope is almost exponential. In many, many cases, 10, 15 years ago, outside of maybe murders and rapes, it was nice to have, but not really. We didn't do a lot of testing in those other areas. Now DNA is required, demanded in almost every case. I mean, we're still turning away some DNA cases just because I do not have the staff or the supplies to test the samples. For instance, a felon in possession with a handgun. There's requests weekly, can we do this? And the answer generally is no, unless it's very associated with a very heinous crime. DNA testing on drug baggies to establish who possessed that narcotic has been requested. We're turning those down. So we're focusing just on violent people crime right now with our DNA resources.
All right, Commissioner Peterjohn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Help me understand, we've got two decision packages here for 4 and 6. They both tie in with one specifically mentions DNA. The other one, I assume, has a DNA connection. Are these connected, or are they? And can you prioritize them if they're not, or can you clarify that for me, please?
Yes. The first answer is yes. They are connected in the sense that every sexual assault kit that we receive in the laboratory, we perform DNA testing on. The decision package number 4, that's on slide 35, relates to just the increased cost of the DNA kits just to handle the current caseload that we're doing right now, because we will have to buy more expensive kits next year to allow us to participate in CODIS, which is the DNA database. Decision package number 6 is to address the dramatic increase in the number of sexual assault kits that are being submitted to the laboratory for testing. Back in 2014, we'd average about 5 a month, 6 a month, and we're up to now 15 plus a month as far as just the number of sexual assault kits that are being submitted. So yes, they're related. Decision package 4 addresses all the forensic DNA needs, and number 6 is specifically to address the increased number of sexual assaults or rapes that are being investigated, and the kits are being submitted to our office.
So I should view these two as basically, in effect, one request for $39,000.
That would be a way to look at it, yes, sir.
Okay. Are there other decision packages, because you had several more that were part of the Regional Forensic Science Center presentation that you gave earlier, that would also fall and be connected additively to these two?
The decision package number 7 for the scientist, that is just to handle the amount of DNA testing that's requested. The increase with sexual assault kit submissions would be included in that. But, as we talked about earlier, our homicide rate, our number of rapes, those are significantly increased. DNA cases, we may, in a homicide, we may test hundreds of exhibits. Just the sheer volume of exhibits with a particular homicide is increasing as compared to several years past.
Okay. So I'm hearing you say, in effect, that 4, 6, and 7 decision packages from your area are basically, you've got to have the person with number 7 to do the testing, to actually perform the work that needs to be done to do the tests, and obviously if they don't have the kits, then they have nothing to test, and with more being submitted, so they're all additive and connected.
They are related. The FTE increase would allow us to manage the projected increase in the volume of work that we're expecting for next year. If we did not have that FTE, with the kit money, we could still address it. It would take us longer to get those tests done, but nonetheless, we'd be able to handle the current caseload that we're doing in 2016.
Let me ask you, a forensic scientist 3, in terms of that, and I'm maybe jumping ahead too far here, and if I am, we can pull back, but I was trying to understand, is each kit roughly the same in terms of the time it takes to conduct a test, or do this vary significantly case by case depending upon what type of DNA submission they've got?
The examination of the sexual assault kit can vary. If it's just the examination of the victim, and that's all that's submitted with that kit, that's a certain level of testing. But if we get, for instance, clothing or other trace evidence associated with that, we first have to sort through that. We have to identify areas, for instance, if clothing is submitted with the sexual assault, where biological material will be, and then once we identify the area, then recover the DNA from that and then proceed. So it's highly variable even on a sexual assault kit. Like I said earlier, with homicides, it can be all over the board. We could literally do hundreds of comparisons.
Well, the question I guess I'd have is, in terms of the Forensic Scientist 3, roughly how many DNA cases would you expect them to be able to perform per month or per week or over whatever appropriate time frame it would be?
I would, and this is a real rough number because, again, it's so case dependent, but I'd say 50 or so.
Per year?
Per
month?
year. I'm sorry, per year.
50, so one per week?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioners, any other questions or comments for Dr. Warwick? I don't think there is. So I think we'd like to say thank you to you as well for coming and giving us a deeper discussion today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right.
Commissioners, that's all I have for today.
Oh, good. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Commissioner John.
Dr. Rohrig, one other question. You mentioned sheriff submissions of DNA.
Yes, sir.
Would they For instance, if you had one of the police departments make a submission, would they handle that directly and keep the chain of custody and within their department then, and they'd submit it to KBI and then bring it back?
That would be correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I don't see any other comments, so again, I think you're off the hook. Thank you very much for coming up today. I don't think there's anything else we want to talk about today. So with that, Mr. Manager, anything else? That's it. All right. Well, we spent just about an hour, so we got done a little bit early. Thank you for everyone for being here today. See you next time.